All right, so Bulki is finally getting used to his new haircut. He has stopped hiding behind the couch every time he sees his reflection, which honestly puts him ahead of most marketers when it comes to dealing with change. And speaking of change, welcome to the final episode of our Webinar Stats Deep Dive. We have covered webinar marketing, registration, and engagement data, and now it's time for the part everyone has been waiting for. ROI and repurposing, aka how to actually make money from your webinars and turn one session into enough content to keep your marketing team busy for weeks. Let's start with something that's going to hurt. 35% of marketers say their biggest challenge of running webinars is proving ROI to stakeholders. This is insane to me because webinars are literally one of the most trackable marketing channels ever invented. You know exactly who signed up, who showed up, what they engaged with, and what they did afterward. So why most people struggle with ROI, right? 39% of marketers only track leads as their primary metric. To explain you what this means in real life, it's like judging a restaurant by how many people walked through the door instead of how much money they spent. Only 17% of marketers track pipeline influence, and just 12% measure actual revenue impact. Here is what you should be tracking instead. Revenue attributed to webinar leads, pipeline influenced or created by webinars, customer acquisition cost compared to other channels you use, lifetime value of webinar generated customers, and also time from webinar attendance to close deal. Without all this data, webinars will always seen as nice to have instead of revenue engines. And that's exactly why webinar programs get cut when budgets get tight. Here, I'll show you my webinar ROI tracking playbook so you can use it too. So first, connect your webinar platform to your CRM. 75% of marketers already do this. Second, pass all the webinar engagement data to your CRM. Again, your webinar platform actually should do this for you. Then you should score the leads. Not all webinar attendees are created equal, right? Someone who stayed for 90 minutes or 60 minutes and participated in polls is worth way more than someone who joined for 5 minutes and bounced. So pass the hot leads to sales for more personalized follow-ups and nurture the rest until they are ready to go to sales. And finally, track the full customer journey from registration to close deal, because you can't optimize what you can't measure. Without this setup, you won't be able to track the ROI, because this is the biggest ROI challenge, marketing attribution in B2B sales cycle, right? Someone might attend your webinar in January, download your guide in March, attend another webinar in May, and finally convert in August. And traditional attribution models give your webinar zero credit for that conversion. And the solution is multi-touch attribution tracking. Tag every touch point in your CRM and track the full customer journey. Webinars often play the important nurturing role in long sales cycles specifically, and they don't always get first touch or last touch credit, but they are essential for moving prospects through the funnel. With proper tracking, you'll often find that webinars have 2 to 3 times more ROI impact than you initially realized, because they are influencing deals throughout the entire sales cycle. Now let's move on and see where the real money is hiding. Which content brings the most ROI? Let me show you actually. Educational sessions actually generate 53% more ROI than product demos. Let me repeat that. Teaching people something valuable makes you 53% more money than showing them your product. So instead of buy our product, successful webinars say, here is how we solve your problem. And then they naturally position their solution as the best way to do it. And customer story webinars rank second in ROI effectiveness. And even though only 18% of marketers run them, this is actually criminal negligence of easy money. Think about it. When someone, just like your prospect, explains how your product solved their exact problem, that's not marketing. That's an advice from someone who went through what you are going through now and who successfully solved that problem you face right now. So based on this, I prepared my content strategy that you can also use. Run 60% educational webinars to build trust and authority, 30% customer stories to provide social proof, and use only 10% for product demos for people who are already convinced they need your solution. This mix consistently delivers the highest ROI because you are meeting people where they are in the buying journey. You're not trying to force everyone into a sales conversation. Now let's get started with the repurposing data. So 87% of B2B marketers are using AI for webinars and virtual events. AI repurposing saves marketers over 13,000 hours and 650,000 per year. That's not a typo. 13,000 hours. Can you imagine? Here is what's happening. One webinar used to equal one piece of content before we had AI. Now, with AI repurposing, one webinar becomes 15 pieces of content across every channel you can think of. The average webinar has 5 clip-worthy moments with high virality potential. That's 5 social media posts right there. Plus, you get a full blog post from the transcript, email newsletter content, LinkedIn articles, LinkedIn posts, quotes from the speaker, and even podcast episodes. It takes 2.5 hours to manually write a blog post from a webinar. And with AI, it's about like 3 minutes. If you are still doing this manually, you are essentially choosing to work 50 times harder for the same result. And if you want to ask about the content quality, I'll tell you. Let me show you the next slide. So engagement with AI-generated content increased by more than 7 times this year. To be honest, we are very against of AI-generated content at Contrast. That's why the model our Repurpose AI uses is trained on your content, on the transcript of your webinar. So it's not ChatGPT generated. Your live audience is just the beginning. Let's say you have 80 people attend your webinar live. Decent number, right, for live attendance. But then 47% more watch the replay. And then you create 5 social clips that get shared across the platforms. The blog post ranks in Google and gets ongoing traffic. Email newsletter content reaches your entire list. Sales team uses customer story clips in their demos. And that 80 people webinar just reached 800 plus people across multiple touch points. And your cost per impression went from like expensive to practically free. This is why smart marketers are treating webinars as content factories, not just events. Now, next stat. Companies host a webinar every 19 days on average. That's about 19 webinars per year. And if each webinar generates 15 pieces of repurposed content, you have just created 285 pieces of marketing content annually. Your content calendar is basically done. Your blog has fresh content every week, all from doing something you should already be doing, talking to your customers and industry leaders. The real ROI isn't just from the webinar itself. It's from all the touch points that follow. When someone doesn't attend your live webinar but sees your clip on LinkedIn or on YouTube, reads your blog post, and then gets your email sequence, they are getting multiple exposures to your message. Marketing psychology says it takes 7 to 12 touch points before someone buys, and webinar repurposing gives you those touch points automatically. Plus, different people consume content differently. Some prefer video, others read blogs, some listen to podcasts. By repurposing one webinar into multiple formats, you are meeting your audience where they already are instead of forcing them to come to you. So here is what you are going to do after watching this video. First, audit your current ROI tracking. Can you tell me the revenue generated from your last 3 webinars? If not, you are not ready to scale. Second, set up proper analytics. Connect your webinar platform to your CRM, implement lead scoring, and start tracking the full customer journey. Third, switch to ROI-focused content. 60% educational, 30% customer story, and 10% product demos, I already told you. This mix consistently delivers the highest returns. Next, optimize for engagement. Use polls, Q&A, and interactive features to identify your most qualified prospects during the webinar. Fifth, create behavior-based follow-up sequences. High-engaged attendees get different treatment than passive viewers or people who dropped from the beginning. Next, plan your content calendar around webinars. One webinar per month gives you enough repurposed content to fill every marketing channel. Look, we have covered a lot of ground in this 4-part series. We talked about marketing and promotion strategies that actually work, registration tips that maximize show-up rates, engagement techniques that keep people watching, and now ROI and repurposing that multiply your content investment. But if you take away just one thing from all of this, let it be this. Webinars are measurable revenue engines, not marketing experiments. The moment you start tracking real ROI metrics instead of vanity metrics like attendance, everything changes. Your ROI goes up because you are measuring the full impact, not just live attendance or number of registrations. Your content calendar gets easier because one webinar fits every channel, and your audience gets more value because they can consume your insights in whatever format works best for them. So thanks for joining me on this deep dive into webinar data. If you found this valuable, make sure you check out that full 56 stat report linked in the description. And if you are ready to start treating your webinars like the content gold mines they are, well, you know where to look. And until next time, keep those ROI metrics front and center. And remember, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Cheers!